For almost 170 years, the soaring spire of St. Mary's has marked a focus of worship, fellowship, and spirituality in the heart of Sheffield. But the story of the Catholic Church and the city stretches back much further in time. The Gothic Revival building is an architectural treasure and testament to the vision, energy, and faith of a remarkable priest, Father Charles Pratt. Its completion in 1850 was the culmination of Father Pratt's life work and the beginning of a new chapter in which St. Mary's gave physical expression to the revival and growth of the faith in Sheffield. For over 900 years, from before the mission of St. Augustine, Christianity in England was Catholic Christianity, and the reminders of that medieval world and of the living faith are part of the fabric of this magnificent building. On these stone seats, or sedilia, were where the clergy sat when services were conducted, hidden from the view of the congregation. By the 1970s, reforms ensured the congregations were far more involved in the service. Further reminders of the medieval past are found in the 15th century alabaster altar panels, which were donated to St. Mary's while it was being built. The panels, which have been extensively and meticulously restored, depict the Annunciation, Assumption, and Coronation of the Blessed Virgin Mary, and 4 scenes from the life of our Lord. For many years, these were displayed in the mortuary chapel and now can be viewed in the sacristy corridor by appointment. St. Mary's beautiful stained glass windows also tell us much about a medieval age where few were literate, and church buildings themselves told stories in pictures and carvings. Windows were crowded with symbols that identified saints and other key religious figures and were often arranged in an order that related a narrative. Some of the stained glass we see today dates from 1850, but the most modern glass is found on the north wall, within the Blessed Sacrament Chapel. The original glass was destroyed by German bombing in 1940, though the 2 topmost parts of the windows survived. The Second World War damaged many English churches and cathedrals, but greater destruction was wrought on stained glass and other images during the Reformation in the 16th century that shattered the unity of the Western Christian Church and brought martyrdom and persecution in its wake. 40 English and Welsh Catholic martyrs of Tudor times are commemorated by their names inscribed over the arches in the nave. The persecution was intense and widespread, and local Catholics were not spared. The Hallam window depicts 2 martyred priests flanking the Virgin Mary, Nicholas Garlick and Robert Ludlam, who in 1588 were captured at Padley Hall just outside Sheffield and later hanged, drawn and quartered in Derby. During the 17th and 18th centuries, the persecution eased a little, but legal barriers to Catholic participation in public life remained, and open worship was illegal. For many years, a house in Fargate, known as the Lord's House and owned by the Dukes of Norfolk, concealed a small, discreet Catholic chapel. For almost 250 years, until the granting of legal emancipation in 1829, Catholics experienced varying degrees of persecution, wide-ranging legal restrictions, social exclusion, and toleration. But the faith endured. In 1778, the Catholic Relief Act allowed Catholics to own property, inherit land, and join the army, which needed Catholic soldiers from Ireland and the Scottish Highlands. During the early 19th century, further reforms allowed priests to operate more openly, and missions were set up in the larger towns and cities. From 1816 to 1846, a small Catholic chapel stood on the site of this cathedral. The statue of the Virgin Mary was removed from that chapel and placed in its current position when the old chapel was demolished and St. Mary's built in its place. As the 19th century progressed, Catholicism in Sheffield and across the country began to revive. Persecution of French Catholics following the Revolution drove exiles to England, among them Auguste Pugin, father of Augustus Pugin, a key figure in the Gothic revival who designed the west window of St. Mary's and the angel reredos against the east wall. This window, with its paired biblical scenes, dates back to the completion of the church in 1850. It was Father Charles Pratt who dedicated his life to realizing that vision. In the 1840s, he foresaw the need for a new church to accommodate the growing number of Catholic worshippers, as the old chapel was fast becoming too small for the purpose. In 1844, he announced that a new church would be built. Within 2 years, the land had been bought and the foundation stone was laid on Lady Day, 1847. The church, which was designed by the Sheffield architect Emmy Hadfield, was based on St Andrew's Church in Heckington, Lincolnshire, and by the end of 1848 the walls were complete to the roofline. But in January 1849, Father Pratt was taken ill, and on the 17th of February he died. He was only 38 years old. The nearest Catholic cemetery was then in Rotherham, but Father Pratt had long expressed a wish to be buried in St Mary's, and Chief Stonemason Benjamin Gregory secretly dug up the coffin and brought it back to the church, preparing the vault himself and secretly reburying Father Pratt within it. Though the visionary was departed, the vision lived on. In 1850, the government and the Vatican reached an agreement to allow Catholics to have bishoprics, parishes and cathedrals as for the first time since the Reformation. It seems likely Father Pratt envisaged St Mary's becoming the Catholic new cathedral for Yorkshire, for it included a separate Blessed Sacrament chapel, a feature usually reserved for a cathedral church. But it would be 130 years before St Marie attained that status. The new Catholic diocese was centred first on Beverley, then on Leeds. It was only when, in the 1970s, that the population of the Leeds diocese became too much for one bishop, and the new Diocese of Hallam was created, centred on Sheffield, with St Mary's as its cathedral. An altar, ambo and baptismal font are key features of every church, but a bishop's chair or cathedra is only found in a cathedral. These, which are purpose-built and matching, were installed in 2012. In the span of time from 1850 to the present day, through war and peace, through times of prosperity and hardship, St Marie has provided solace and consolation and a place of worship for Catholics of all classes and all races. The universal nature of the church can be seen in the Lady Chapel, which contains a statue of Our Lady sculptured in Rome, and the Polish War Memorial, with an icon of Our Lady of Czestochowa. It is a focal point for the many Polish people who have settled in Sheffield since the Second World War. In recent decades, Catholics from many nations have settled in Sheffield, bringing their faith with them and finding a home in this community. Today, people of dozens of nationalities worship alongside each other in this cathedral. Though Latin is no longer the common language of the Church, the faith is universal and endures. Catholic worship in Sheffield has never ceased. It survived the long years of persecution. Through the restrictions and varying tolerance of the centuries that followed, blossomed again in the 19th century and has experienced quiet growth ever since. Today, the cathedral remains a spiritual centre for the city, looking to the future and providing a living reminder of Catholic faith. It reaches out to other Christians, especially with those of the original parish church, which is now the Anglican Cathedral, to other faith communities in Sheffield, and to all who seek a quiet, peaceful place in the midst of a vibrant city. There is much more to see and appreciate in St Mary's, and our highly experienced guides offer tours throughout the year. For now, we leave you with the words carved above the sanctuary arch.